Okay, let's dive right into this explainer. We're going to explore a time when domestic life wasn't just, pressing a button on a touchscreen, but an absolute physical gauntlet of heavy machinery. Today, we're focusing on exactly 10 gadgets that people used every single day that are now completely obsolete. We're looking back at the mechanical ancestors of our modern world.
Ever used an asparagus buncher? Yeah, I'm guessing not. But today we're taking a little museum tour of 10 bizarre, highly specialized tools from the 19th and 20th centuries. These exhausting, literal finger-pinching contraptions actually paved the way for all the modern conveniences we totally take for granted today.
So, the Victorian era brought this absolute explosion of hyper-specialized inventions. Middle and upper-class consumers genuinely believed that every single cooking or cleaning task needed its own dedicated tool. This gadget boom turned the average pantry into a terrifying collection of gears, cranks, and heavy cast iron. And honestly, a lot of this stuff just ended up gathering dust once people realized it was way more trouble than it was worth.
Section 1. Specialization in food prep.
First up on our list of 10 is the raisin seeder. See, before modern agricultural miracles gave us the seedless grapes we eat today, Victorian raisins actually contained seeds that had to be painstakingly removed before baking. If a recipe called for a pound of seeded raisins, you literally had to pick the seeds out of hundreds of individual raisins by hand. So the mechanical raisin seeder was this spring-loaded contraption designed solely to grip the raisin while tiny little hooks pulled the seeds out. It is a perfect example of just how much time people spent on single, highly tedious tasks.
Which brings us to gadget number 2, and it is a much more imposing piece of machinery. Just look at this absolute monster. It's the mechanical food chopper. Designed by a guy named Leroy Sterrett, the action of this chopper was actually inspired by the giant walking beam engines used on Mississippi steamboats. You turn the crank, and that activated a flywheel that simultaneously rotated a food container while raising and lowering this terrifying guillotine-like chopping blade. It literally brought the loud sounds and the very real danger of an industrial factory right into the family kitchen.
Now, closely related to the chopper were those heavy cast iron meat grinders. And while they definitely saved time compared to chopping by hand, they brought their own special brand of misery. They clamped aggressively to the edges of tables and usually required 2 people to operate smoothly. Worse than that, the screw mechanism inside had enough force to pull your fingers right in along with the meat. Oh, and the cleanup was an absolute nightmare. Fat and meat got lodged in every tiny crevice, which meant the whole thing had to be completely disassembled, scrubbed, and dried immediately. If you didn't, you'd get toxic rust almost instantly.
Section 2. The Apple Peeling Arms Race.
Gadget number 3 is the lightning apple parer. Now, the apple was an absolute staple of early American life, and preserving them meant peeling literally hundreds of pounds of fruit. The lightning parer, which was patented in 1863 right in the middle of the Civil War, looked and sounded like a heavy iron weapon. It perfectly captures that era's obsession with industrial techno-optimism. You'd spin the crank, and a spring-loaded peeler would strip off these long ribbons of rind. They were so popular, in fact, that neighbors would actually gather together for apple paring bees just to share the immense workload.
Section 3. Heavy-duty housework tools.
For gadget number 4, we have the sad iron. And trust me, the name is perfectly fitting, because ironing back then was a scorching, dangerous, and absolutely miserable job. Sad is actually an Old English word that means heavy, dense, and solid. Since these irons were heated directly on an open fire or a wood stove, you needed thick pot holders just to grab the metal handles, meaning you are constantly risking burns and tracking black soot under your freshly cleaned clothes.
6.75 pounds. That is exactly how much a single solid cast iron sad iron recovered from an archaeological dig weighed. To iron effectively, a household needed this highly coordinated system. You had to constantly rotate multiple heavy irons between the stove and your ironing board, just so one was always heating up while the other was in use. It actually wasn't until the 1870s that a 19-year-old inventor named Mary Florence Potts revolutionized the whole thing by patenting a detachable wooden handle that finally stayed cool. A real game changer.
Moving on to gadget number 5, the rug beater. By the 1840s, carpets actually became affordable for a lot of families. But in homes heated by coal and wood stoves, those beautiful rugs quickly filled up with dirt, ash, and smoke. The rug beater, which was often made of rattan, cane, or coiled wire, was an exhausting necessity. You literally had to haul these massive, heavy carpets outside, hang them over a line, and deliver a punishing, full-body workout just to physically whack the dirt out of them.
Section 4. Fussy food and presentation.
Take gadget number 6, the asparagus buncher, for instance. Yes, the Victorians really had a cast iron device specifically designed just to bundle asparagus. It featured these adjustable clamps to hold the stalks at precise measurements so the operator could tie twine at perfectly spaced intervals. Why, you ask? Well, because presenting unaligned asparagus was seen as a sign of sloppy household management. It was the ultimate fussy status symbol for a task that didn't change the taste of the food one bit.
Then for gadget number 7, we have the elaborate jelly molds. The Victorians absolutely loved visually stunning, jiggly jellies as their table centerpieces, but the molds used to create these elaborate wobbly castles of gelatin were total nightmares to maintain. They were made of copper and tin with incredibly intricate crevices, meaning cleaning just one single mold could take 30 minutes of grueling servant labor using specialized micro brushes. And if you missed a spot, that leftover residue caused nasty mold growth or toxic tarnish.
Section 5. Hand-cranked kitchen miracles. Coming in at number 8, we have hand-cranked rotary egg beaters. Before these existed, whipping egg whites for a large cake by hand could take 20 minutes of exhausting, non-stop labor. But the 1857 Griffith's whisk proudly boasted that every single revolution of the handle produced 288 furious strokes. This genuinely saved an incredible amount of time, reducing a 20-minute chore down to just 5 minutes of relatively easy cranking. And it fundamentally changed baking by allowing way more air into cakes. Now, what's really fascinating to me here is the resistance to new technology. Despite the obvious time savings, a lot of strict culinary experts back then actually despised these mechanical innovations. Eliza Leslie, who was a famous cookbook author in 1847, insisted cooks should do it the hard way. She literally commanded them to use wooden rods and explicitly warned against using metal egg beaters. I guess some things never change, right?
For gadget number 9, we have the mechanical butter churn. Turning cream into butter is incredibly labor-intensive, so Victorian inventors added complex internal gears and cranks to speed up the agitation process. The most elaborate models even featured tiny little glass windows so you could monitor the butter without popping the lid off. But once again, cleaning the thick cream out of those internal gears was an absolute nightmare. Ultimately, though, owning a complex mechanical churn was just as much about displaying your family's social status as it was about actually buttering your toast.
Section 6. Life before modern refrigeration.
And finally, gadget number 10, the icebox. Before you could just plug in a refrigerator and walk away, keeping food cold required a beautifully crafted, insulated wooden cabinet and literal blocks of ice. It required endless manual labor. You needed massive daily ice deliveries from an iceman, and you had to constantly monitor and empty the dripping water pans underneath as the ice inevitably melted. It was a tedious daily chore just to keep tomorrow's dinner from spoiling.
So, the really crucial point here is this. While we might laugh at a hyper-specialized asparagus clamp or cringe at the heavy, finger-pinching danger of a cast-iron meat grinder, we kind of have to respect them. These 10 exhausting high-maintenance gadgets that people used every day were the bold, inventive first steps toward the automated, push-button conveniences we completely take for granted right now.
I really hope this explainer has given you a newfound appreciation for your dishwasher, your stand mixer, and your electric fridge. But it begs the question, what are we using today that future generations will find totally hilarious? Seriously, which of the sleek, modern gadgets sitting in your kitchen right now will look absolutely absurd to people 100 years from now? Let us know your thoughts and keep learning.